The weight of the world felt heavy on Brian's shoulders, a familiar burden for a man whose life was measured in coffee refills and tipped coins. As an ordinary waiter in a city that never stopped moving, he was a ghost in the machinery of the everyday. That morning, the subway car was particularly stifling, a symphony of screeching metal and heavy sighs. Brian leaned his head against the cold, vibrating wall of the train, his eyes fluttering shut as he drifted in and out of a shallow sleep. He didn't notice the world around him until he felt a soft shift in the air right beside him. Sitting just inches away, so close that their sleeves occasionally brushed, was a girl who seemed to radiate a quiet, ethereal grace. She was a stark contrast to the grime of the morning commute. Brian caught a faint scent of lilies and rain as she adjusted her coat, her eyes fixed on a book he couldn't quite see. She was there, a silent companion in the crowded car, until the train lurched to a halt at a station just one stop before his own. In a sudden flurry of movement, she stood up and hurried through the sliding doors just as they began to hiss shut. It wasn't until the train began to pull away that Brian noticed it, a small, elegant leather handbag sitting precisely where she had been. He lunged for it, but the glass barrier was already between them. Through the window, he saw her disappear into the crowd, oblivious to what she had left behind. Finding her phone inside was a stroke of luck. It wasn't locked, and a quick call to a contact labeled Mom settled the matter. The girl's name was Ariel, and her mother promised that Ariel would stop by Brian's apartment that evening to retrieve the bag.
By the time the sun began to set, Brian was back in his small, dim apartment. Every muscle in his body ached with a dull, throbbing exhaustion. He slumped into his chair, the bag sitting on the table like a mystery waiting to be solved. He decided to call her one last time to confirm she had the right floor, but as he reached deep into the silk-lined interior of the purse, his fingers didn't find the smooth screen of a phone. Instead, they wrapped around something cold, heavy, and made of glass. He pulled out a peculiar, ornate flask. Inside, a swirling, iridescent liquid pulsed with a soft, hypnotic light, shifting from deep violet to a shimmering, pearlescent rose. A small parchment tag was tied to the neck with a silver thread, bearing a message in elegant, swirling script. "Make your wish a reality." Brian stared at it, his reflection looking back at him from the glass, tired, pale, and unremarkable. He felt a strange, magnetic pull toward the liquid, a sense that this was more than just a decorative bottle. Suddenly, a sharp, rhythmic knock echoed through the room.
The sound startled him, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his system. Panic flared. Was he ready? Was the apartment clean? Did he look as exhausted as he felt? In a moment of sheer, irrational impulse, driven by a desperate curiosity and the pressure of the moment, he popped the cork. A scent of ancient flowers and ozone filled the air. He didn't drink the whole thing. He only took a single, cautious sip. The change was instantaneous. It wasn't a gradual shift, but a violent, beautiful explosion of sensation. A wave of searing, melodic heat crashed through his veins, and Brian felt the floor vanish beneath his feet. He gasped, clutching the table as his entire world began to liquefy and reform. He watched in a state of terrified wonder as his large, calloused hands began to shrink and pale before his very eyes. His fingers lengthened, turning slender and delicate, his skin becoming as smooth and flawless as fine porcelain. The heavy, muscular frame he had known all his life began to melt away, narrowing into a graceful, lithe silhouette.
She felt her bones shifting with a soft, rhythmic clicking, her height adjusting as her legs grew long, toned, and perfectly sculpted. A sudden, powerful weight blossomed at her chest and hips, her old clothes tightening and tearing against new, breathtaking curves that felt both foreign and strangely right. As a cascade of thick, silken hair tumbled down her back in a dark, lustrous wave, the transformation was complete. The waiter named Brian was gone. In his place stood a woman of such staggering, radiant beauty that the very air in the room seemed to shimmer around her. She stood on her new, elegant feet, her heart racing against her ribs,
just as the knock at the door came again, louder and more insistent. She stood frozen for a heartbeat, her new, delicate fingers trembling as she reached for the door handle. Her pulse was a frantic rhythm against her ribs, and every movement felt dangerously fluid, as if her body were made of silk rather than bone and muscle. She caught a glimpse of herself in the small, cracked mirror by the hallway, a vision of cascading hair, luminous skin, and eyes that held the depth of 1,000 mysteries. And for a second, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Taking a deep, shaky breath that felt lighter and sweeter than any breath she had ever taken, she pulled the door open.
Ariel stood in the hallway, her expression a mix of exhaustion and relief. But the moment her eyes met the stunning woman standing in Brian's doorway, she stopped dead. Her jaw dropped, and she instinctively took a half step back, checking the apartment number. She had expected a tired waiter, a guy named Brian who sounded polite but exhausted over the phone. Instead, she was looking at a goddess. Ariel stammered, her eyes wide with total disbelief, and asked if Brian was home. She spoke with a voice that was no longer a baritone, but a soft, melodic alto that sent a shiver down her own spine, telling Ariel that Brian wasn't there anymore, that there was only her. The silence that followed was heavy with shock. Ariel's gaze darted from the woman's perfect hourglass figure to the leather handbag sitting on the table, and then finally to the small, ornate flask that still stood uncorked, a faint wisp of violet vapor clinging to its rim. Recognition flared in Ariel's eyes, a look of profound realization that replaced her confusion. She stepped into the room, her hands shaking as she looked at the new woman who had once been the man she spoke to just hours ago. She handed the bag over, her movements graceful despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Ariel didn't scream or run. Instead, she reached out and gently took her hands that were now soft, thin, and beautiful. Ariel's voice was a whisper as she explained that the flask wasn't supposed to be found. It was an ancient heirloom passed down from her grandmother, a relic of a forgotten magic designed to manifest the deepest, most hidden desires of the soul. She looked at the breathtaking transformation before her, the perfect legs, the stunning curves, the radiant face, and she didn't see a stranger. She saw the wish that Brian had unknowingly carried in his art. Ariel felt a sudden, intense wave of responsibility and connection. She told her that she couldn't possibly leave her like this, alone and shocked in a world that wouldn't understand. She decided then and there to stay the night, to help her navigate this strange new reality, and to protect her during these fragile first hours of her new life. As the evening deepened, the tension between them shifted into something warmer, something more intimate. Ariel couldn't stop staring, offering soft compliments about how her new form was more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. She felt a strange magnetic pull toward the woman she had just met, a woman who was both a stranger and the person who had saved her belongings. As the city lights began to twinkle outside the window and the apartment grew quiet, the air became thick with unspoken questions and a new electric energy. They sat close together, the mystery of the magic still humming in the air, leaving only the shadow of the night to witness what would happen next as the world outside faded away.